Uncommon. Human is currently the only common race in the game, and it's a 25% chance when rolling for races. It's also the default race a player starts with before they roll. It doesn't alter the player's appearance, and the only buff it gives is called Blessed, which provides the player with plus 3% luck and plus 3% extra experience. It's one of, if not the worst race in the game, since the buffs it gives are basically non-existent, but on the bright side, at least it doesn't have any buffs, and it is the default, so you can't expect much from it. Uncommon. Elf is one of only 2 uncommon races in the game. It has a 15% chance of being rolled, and its stats are decent. It does slightly change the player's appearance, giving them elf ears and making them a little taller. It has 2 buffs named Superior Genes and Glorious. Superior Genes gives the player plus 15% stamina and plus 5% height, while Glorious gives them a 7% luck boost. It's better than Human, but still not very good. Its only redeeming quality is the plus 7% luck boost, since it's one of the only races to actually give a luck boost. Plus 15% stamina isn't that bad either, but there are a lot of other races that have either that or a movement speed buff. Zombie is an uncommon race that has a 14% chance of being rolled. It gives the player a green mossy skin color with a rough texture to sell the zombie look. It comes with 1 debuff and 2 buffs. The debuff, Rotten, takes away 25% health from the player. The first buff, Mutated Genes, gives the player plus 2% health regeneration every 5 seconds. The second buff, Absorb, gives the player a 15% chance to convert incoming damage to health. This buff heavily carries this race, at least up until mid, late, and end game. Once you get enough armor to the point where you aren't worried about dying in 2 hits from most enemies, it's not that good. The negative 25% health is also a massive debuff that may deter players from using this race. There has been an idea floating around that this race should make the zombie enemies unable to fight you since you literally blend in, but seriously, who does that benefit besides people with under an hour of gameplay? Most people aren't even in the first world, and that's the only place you even see zombies. Maybe in the future though, this race could get a buff. Rare. Goblin is a rare race that has a 10.5% chance of being rolled and is only useful for one thing. It shrinks the player, gives them green skin, a long green goblin nose, and pointy green ears. It has 1 debuff and 2 buffs, just like Zombie, except you'll only ever care about one of them. The debuff is called Tiny, and it takes away 15% of the player's health and makes them 15% smaller. And what's the trade-off for this debuff? The Sneaky buff, which gives the player plus 15% movement speed and plus 10% attack speed, but only when using daggers. The last buff is Bargain and is probably the only reason you'll ever use this race. Bargain gives the player a 12% discount when shopping. You'll likely never use this race for combat, since the minus 15% health is gonna play a pretty big role in killing enemies, and the plus 10% attack speed is useless since the dagger itself sucks as a weapon. That 12% discount though is extremely good. To put into perspective how good it is, the Demonic Pickaxe, the most expensive pickaxe in the game, costs 500,000 gold. If you equip the Goblin race, it only costs 440,000 gold, still expensive, but a 60,000 gold difference is insane. It also works when buying potions. The only thing it doesn't make cheaper is putting runes on weapons or armor and enhancing armor and weapons. Undead is a really bad rare race with a 9% chance of being rolled. It turns the entire player's body into a skeleton. It has 1 debuff and 2 buffs. Fragile Bones, the debuff, takes away 12% of the player's health. Sharp Surface reflects 10% of the damage taken back onto whatever enemy attacked the player, and Second Chance refills 50% of the player's health when their health is under 10% every 5 minutes. This race has no redeeming qualities at all. Sharp Surface is almost never going to help you actually kill an enemy, especially if they have a lot of health and deal a lot of damage to you. The Second Chance is also useless because depending on what you're fighting, you're more likely to die before you even get to 10% health or under, and it only refills the player's health by 50% every 5 minutes. This race might be worse than Human because at least Human has no debuffs. Orc is currently the last rare race and also the rarest, being an 8% chance to roll. It turns the player's skin green, makes them bigger, and gives them horns on both sides of their mouth. It has 1 debuff and 1 buff. The debuff is called Heavy, and it takes away 10% stamina and 10% movement speed from the player. The buff Muscular is actually a really nice balance. It gives the player plus 10% physical damage, plus 15% health, and plus 10% size. But nobody cares about size. This race is perfect for whenever you need to farm kills, since you can just stay in one area the whole time, making the stamina and movement speed debuff a non-issue. Epic. Dwarf is an epic race that's also one of the best races for mining. It has a 7% chance to be rolled, and it shrinks the player. It has 1 debuff and 2 buffs. The debuff, Heavy Short, shortens the player's height by 20%, so basically that's useless, and it takes away 5% movement speed from the player, which is barely noticeable. The first buff is called Gifted Miner, which gives the player plus 15% mining damage and plus 5% better forge. The second buff is called Critical Mining, which gives the player a 20% chance to deal plus 50% more damage to rocks when mining mining them. If you want to break rocks fast for like a quest or just because, then this race will make your life so much easier. The only race better for mining than this one would be Angel, and that's just because of the plus 30% luck boost it gives, but even then, that's mostly useful for late and end game when you need rare ores. If you just want to mine rocks really fast without caring about what you get, then this race is perfect. Shadow is a really good epic race for fighting. It has a 6% chance to be rolled, has basically only buffs, and it turns the player's skin pitch black and slightly see-through. It also gives the player a shadowy aura and red glowing eyes. The first buff it has is Shadow Pact, which gives the player plus 15% movement speed, plus 10% attack speed, plus 10% stamina, plus 5% physical damage, and takes away 10% health, but that doesn't matter when you compare it to everything else. The second buff is called Phantom Step, and it gives the player a 15% chance to turn into a shadow to dodge an enemy's attack when the player takes damage. This dodge also makes the enemies run away for a short period of time, making it easier for you to kill them. Overall, a really good race for combat, and it looks cool. Vampire is easily the second best fighting race in the game, being right behind Demon. It has a 4% chance to be rolled, has no debuffs, and it gives the player a goofy vampire cape. The first buff is called Bloodthirst, and it gives the player plus 15% lifesteal every time they hit an enemy, which is extremely overpowered, especially when paired with a weapon that has Drain Edge runes. It effectively makes you almost unkillable if you get a good enough combo of both. Blade Adept is the second buff, and it gives a 10% damage boost, but only when using straight swords. This race honestly should be a legendary. Minotaur is probably the worst legendary race. It has a 1.75% chance of being rolled, and it makes the player bigger, giving them large Minotaur legs and horns around their head. It also has one debuff and one buff. The debuff is called Beast, which gives the player plus 20% health. Don't be fooled, that's the only slightly good thing. Takes away 10% movement speed and stamina, gives the player plus 10% height and plus 20% width and depth. The buff, aka ability, is the only redeeming quality for this race. It's called Bull's Fury, and whenever the player goes under 50% health, a rage mode will be activated that increases movement speed and physical damage by 30%. The race itself isn't terrible, but comparing it to the other legendaries puts it to shame, and honestly, you'd be better off using one of the other epics, like Shadow. If you wanted something combat related, if this race were an epic instead, it would probably be a lot more worth it. But for a 1.75% chance, it's just not good enough, and most of the time, people roll off it when they get it. Dragonborn is a legendary race that is basically Demon before you actually get Demon. It has a 1.5% chance of being rolled, and it turns the player's skin color red, gives them black horns on their head, and makes them slightly taller. Has absolutely no debuffs and 3 buffs, making it one of only 3 non-mythical races to have no downsides, with the other 2 being human and elf. The first buff is Durable Scales, which gives the player plus 20% max health and plus 10% height, but who cares about height? The second buff is Sharp Fangs, which gives the player plus 12% physical damage. The third buff is the best one, and it's called Dragon's Breath. It gives the player a 40% chance to burn an enemy and deal 30% of whatever weapon they use damage per second for 3 seconds. So essentially every time the player hits an enemy, they have a 40% chance to do an additional 90% of their total damage from burning. The burn, combined with the physical damage and max health buffs, makes this race the best legendary race in the game and the best non-mythical combat race in the game. Golem is the last legendary race, and it's also really good. Unlike Minotaur, it makes the player a lot bigger, turns their skin into stone, and gives them yellow glowing eyes. It has 3 buffs just like Dragonborn, but it has one small downside that's honestly not that noticeable. The first buff is called Tank. It gives the player plus 30% health, takes away 10% of their movement speed, and gives them plus 30% size. The second buff is called Heavy Hitter, which gives the player plus 15% attack speed with heavy weapons. The last buff is called Stoneheart, which gives the player a $50 chance to lower incoming damage by 25%. This race is really good for combat since it's made to tank a lot of damage, while also buffing the player's attack speed with heavy weapons. Heavy weapons are usually ignored and never given a chance due to their slow attack speed, so this race buffing their attack speed makes them a lot more useful, even if it's only 15%. It's comparable to the Dragonborn race when it comes to being the best legendary, and whenever bosses do get added into the game, it'll likely become the best due to the ability to lower incoming damage. Phalanx is the race all Gauntlet mains were praying for. It gives the player animalistic features like ears, a snout, some fur on their head, and it has a 1.25% chance of being rolled. It comes with 3 buffs and has absolutely no debuffs. Its first buff, Light-Footed, gives the player a plus 20% stamina boost, plus 20% movement speed, minus 20% dash cooldown, and plus 20% dash distance. It's basically just for those who want to get from one side of the cave to the other extremely fast. The second buff, Cat Reflexes, gives the player a 20% chance to parry parry the next attack, which is kind of useless considering parrying is already a thing in the game. You just need to time your blocks. The last buff is called Clawed Grip, and it gives the player plus $20 attack speed and damage as long as they're using gauntlets. Overall, not a bad legendary race at all, definitely better than Minotaur. Mythical. Angel is a mythical race, and it's also good at pretty much everything. It gives the player large white angel wings, golden arm braces on both arms, and a yellow angelic halo. It has 4 buffs and no debuffs or downsides. The first buff is called Wings, and it lowers the player's dash cooldown by 20%, gives them a 50% farther dashing distance, plus 15% longer dash iframes, which is useful for combat, plus 20% movement speed, a plus 25% jump boost, and plus 20% stamina. The second buff is called Mighty Clover, and it gives the player a plus 30% luck boost. Smite is the third buff, and it gives the player a 50% chance to call upon the heavens and smite an enemy for 30% of physical damage every time they hit an enemy. The last buff is called Holy Hand, and it gives the player infinite stamina as long as they have under 20% health. You can ignore the under 20% health part. I don't know if it's a bug or not, but you pretty much have infinite stamina as long as your health is full. This is the best race for movement, arguably the best race for mining, depending on who you ask. Some people say Dwarf is better, and the Smite makes it really good for combat, since you have a 50% chance to deal an additional 30% damage every hit. Demon is a mythical race, and it's also the best combat race in the game by far. It makes the player bigger, gives them large red wings that low-key are just a recolor of the angel wings, dark gray chains around their arms, and black devil horns on their head. Just like the angel race, it has 4 buffs and no debuffs or downsides. The first buff is Demonic Powers, which gives the player plus 20% movement speed, plus 20% attack speed, plus 20% physical damage, plus 20% stronger fire damage, plus 30% height that doesn't matter, and plus 10% width and depth that also don't matter. The second buff is called Backfire, and it gives the player a 25% chance to burn an enemy whenever the player takes damage. Cursed Aura is another buff, and it works more like a passive. While in combat, you have a small area around you that deals 10% of your weapon damage every second. It's mostly useful for finishing enemies off. The last buff is called Devil's Finger. When you dash, you practically teleport with Hellfire particles, and this dash has a 35% chance to create a Hellfire circle that does 45% of your weapon damage per second for 3 seconds to any enemies unfortunate enough to be standing in it. How exactly this works, I still don't know. I think you have to dash toward or near an enemy to actually activate it, because there's no way it's an actual 35% chance just by dashing. Anyway, this race pretty much has every single combat-based buff a race could have, with the only thing missing being iframes, but that's not really that important. The only thing the race lacks is anything dealing with mining or luck, but that's because it's a 100% combat-focused race. The best setup to have, if you're lucky enough, is to have Angel for mining and Demon for combat, and maybe Dwarf or Goblin as a third choice, Dwarf for mining fast, and Goblin for that sweet discount. Divine. Archangel is what happens when you take the Angel and Demon races and combine them. The right side of the player's body has all of the accessories of the Demon race, while the left side of the player's body has all of the accessories of the Angel race. This race also has a 0.1% chance of being rolled, and it's the first Divine race ever added to the game. It has 4 buffs and no debuffs. Its first buff, Wings, gives the player a minus 35% dash cooldown, plus 75% dash distance, plus 15% longer dash iframes, plus 25% movement speed, a plus 25% jump boost, and plus 25% stamina. It's basically copied and pasted directly from the Angel race's buff of the same name. Same thing with the second buff, Mighty Clover, which gives the player a plus 30% luck boost. Its third buff is pretty much the only buff from the Demon side. When a player is dashing, there is a 50% chance they'll create a holy circle at the dash location, dealing AoE damage to any enemies caught inside for 45% of the player's weapon's damage per second for 3 seconds. The final buff, Archangel Strike, gives attacks a 33% chance to summon a beam of light. For a race that is statistically 5 times harder to get than Angel or Demon, it sure isn't all that much different. It's literally Angel with one ability from Demon. If you like this video, you will definitely like this video on screen. Comment below what you think of the updates so far, and be sure to subscribe as our next few videos will be more content covering the Forge. See you soon!